everyone. Today I have a very special guest with us. She's an old friend. Her name is WIM Sabrina Chevannes, and she is an author of two books. And the first one, the Batsford Book of Chess for Children, and then it also has an accompanying activity book, which you also wrote. Sabrina is also the owner of Complex Creative. So now she's not only a chess trainer and author, but she's also an entrepreneur. Thank you so much, Sabrina.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I've known you for a long time, back when you were doing a lot of chess video and educational content. And I've always been impressed by your style. So thank you so much for calling across the pond.
Thanks. It's been great to be here.
And you've got a nice background behind you. So
yeah, it's where I'd love to be right now, but I can't quite be there. So it's relaxing.
So tell me a little bit about your approach to openings and why you decided to choose this topic to show to our Girls Club Room and our YouTube channel.
I think for me, opening principles have been really important because I've always been super busy doing lots of different things, and I never had as much time as some other people to dedicate to learning solid opening theory. So I always thought it was a really good idea to get a solid foundational knowledge of principles in the opening, which then you can apply to absolutely every opening. So if someone tries a surprise trick on you, you don't feel so panicky. You can actually approach it in the same way. As long as you know these rules, you can apply them to any position and be able to come out of the opening with a decent game that you can fight for. So that's one of the reasons why I think opening principles are really important.
And is there a particular, I know you have like a fresh take on opening principles. Is there one that you think is overemphasized by coaches and perhaps the corollary as well, underemphasized?
That's a good question. I think the overemphasized ones is the pawns one. Lots of people say try not to move more than 2 pawns in the first 10 moves, for example, and they set like quite a solid, quite a rigid framework for it. 10 moves, no more than 2 moves, and then you're sitting in the position and there's an amazing move on the board with a pawn and it could win material, and people are like, oh no, I can't do it because they've been told not to. So I think there's got to be some sort of balance for it. I think that a lot of openings actually that are played by top grandmasters involve tons of poor moves in the first few moves. So there are exceptions and you can get great positions from it. So I think that one's a little bit overemphasized. The underemphasized one, I think, it's a good question. I think maybe it's to do with, I guess it goes into middle game as well, but to do with, piece mobility and like where you want to move your pieces. And I think a really good opening strategy is that you shouldn't move pieces that you're not sure where they want to go before other pieces that know they want to develop to those squares can be moved. So, and I think that applies to a lot of throughout the game, but in the opening particularly, people are worried about where to move certain pieces and trying to force a piece to move to a good square, but it's got lots of options, whereas another one might have a very obvious option and you should always move that one first. And people don't really explain this, I think, when they first start out.
Yeah, they kind of use the sole example of the develops knight before bishops, I think, to encapsulate that point, but you're saying that it's like really a broader point that could apply to not just bishops after knights.
Yeah, exactly. Because obviously knights, they have a place that's more obvious than the bishops do, but I think it applies to all the other pieces too. And it's just in general, definitely move a piece you should be moving to a good square before other pieces where you're not so sure and have lots of options, really.
Great. Well, do you want to go through just kind of like your favorite opening principles, and then maybe you can share your screen and show us a few examples?
Yeah, so I think that depending on where you're at in your chess career, there are different opening principles that you want to stick to. I think if you were to pick 3 fundamentals when you're first starting out, I would say that develop your pieces. Obviously, that's the first thing you should be doing, trying to get your pieces as active as possible. And you should be developing towards the center. So getting control of the center is one of the most important things. Don't be moving them to the side of the board, but towards the center to control as many squares as possible. And then get your king safe. So, And again, maybe bringing back to what you just said about the ones that people overemphasize and they say castle as soon as possible. Sometimes castling could be risky, and I think that as you start to play a little bit, what I find is that some people then say, well, I'm scared of castling because I castled really quickly and then I got checkmated. So the point of castling is to get your king safe, so it doesn't necessarily mean to castle. Sometimes it's safer to, go on the other side of the board or stay in the middle for a little bit and then castle when it is safe. So, but those three fundamentals are definitely what should be applied. So every move you do in the beginning of the game should apply to one of those. Getting control of the center, getting your pieces out, and getting your king safe. That usually does mean castling, obviously. And then I'd say that the other ones that I think are important, we've mentioned try not to make too many poor moves, but I wouldn't put a fixed number on that at all. I'd say that definitely just try to limit the amount of poor moves to necessary poor moves. Again, they should be helping one of those things. They should be helping you try to get your pieces out, or helping you get control of the center, or helping you castle. If they do one of those things, then a poor move is probably a good idea. And then I'd say don't get your queen out too early, because she's your most powerful piece on the board. You don't want to get her into trouble. She'll be chased around by the lower value pieces and you'd waste a lot of time in the opening. So I think that those are the main ones that I'd cover. You often see like really popular ones, but I'd like to introduce a couple that I think are a little bit more abstract, that I think are still good tips for people. And I would say that my other one that I think I stick to, and it's more the like psychological ones, it would be to not panic. So again, when it comes to learning openings and opening traps, I see that people who especially do traps, they do it for the sole reason to catch the person out. And the first thing you're going to do is not panic. If you see a move that you don't know, have you never seen before, you don't know how to handle it, just stay calm and have a look what it does. Approach the position in any other way and be like, well, that's a strange move. What's the purpose of it? What are they trying to achieve? And then go back to the fundamentals of everything you need to do. Make sure there's no immediate threat. And if it's just, to scare you, then continue with your development. Things like that. And I think that one thing I like to say to people think I'm a bit crazy when I say it, is I like to talk to my pieces. That's what I do in the beginning of the game. I actually talk to them because they often tell me where they want to go as opposed to me deciding for them. So if you're sitting there and you're wondering, like you were saying, bishops have lots of options at the beginning of the game. Where do I want to put my bishop? If you speak to the bishop and say, what's its plan for the game? Where does it want to go? It'll often tell you. So if you're white, for example, and you want to start attacking f7, you often put it on c4. That might be the bishop's plan, but depending on the pawn structure and things like that, it will vary. And that's another thing, pawn structure. I think that's super important as well. People forget that pawns also can be super valuable. So I think that the structure of the pawns also dictate the way you should be playing the opening as well. So often if you have a look at the pattern your pawns make and they kind of point in a direction, that's often the sort of direction you want to be playing in. So that leads into the middle game then and gives you a strategy for the middle game play. So if your pawns are pointing towards the king side, then most of your play should probably go towards the king side, and it gives you that kind of idea. So those are sort of opening plans that I come up with and kind of stick to, and it helps me not just in the opening stage, but it helps me get ready for that middle game stage and often leads into that middle game part of the game.
Awesome. Well, you want to show us a couple examples if you share your screen?
Yeah. So I wanted to show two very mini games. They are very mini games, but they're real games that have been played back in the day. And they're classics because they show two examples of where white is not doing anything particularly special, apart from right when the actual striking the iron's hot, but they're just sticking to opening principles. And white's playing, doing everything perfectly fine, but then black is the one that's breaking a few rules. So start off with e4, e5, and knight f3, and black plays d6 in this particular line. So this is still only the second pawn move, so technically it fits some of the rules I was saying about not too many pawn moves in the opening, but it does hinder black's development. So now this poor bishop over here is stuck in its little hole here, so it's not great for the development. So therefore it's not as good a move as it could be. But white continues with a good move, bishop to c4. Like I was saying, if you're not sure where to put it, you could have gone to b5, but this bishop was saying to you that the check is not really worth it because it can be chased away, so it wants to go to c4. Now, in this position, black played bishop to g4, which is a good move. It's developing. It's also putting it on a decent square to pin that white knight. But white thought, that's fine, I'll continue developing. Now, black's fine in this position. He can continue with normal developing moves, but black chose to play the move g6, presumably because he realised he cut this bishop off, and this bishop needed a good place to kind of go and develop, so he thought he might fianchetto it onto g7. However, this is when white played a really crazy move. It's crazy, but it's good because it works. And decided to play the move knight takes e5, which looks absolutely ridiculous. So you're probably thinking, right, that knight was pinned. You're not supposed to move pin pieces. But there is a very good reason. And this white queen is there for the taking. And black actually in the game did swipe that queen very happily, thinking that white was really stupid and didn't notice his knight was pinned. However, white has got 3 minor pieces developed on great squares in the center, controlling the board, and can deliver a deadly blow very, very quickly here. So this is a great example of this. And the game finished very quickly after bishop takes f7 check. The king only had e7 to go to, and then the other knight went into d5, and already that's checkmate after just 7 moves. And it shows you how powerful these minor pieces can be if they just develop in the center, control lots of squares, they coordinate with each other, they don't get in each other's ways. And who needs a queen when you've got that position? So that's one of my favorite mini games, and I believe that's de Légal. People say legal, but I think they're French because the person playing black was called like Saint-Brie, and it was played in Paris, so I'm guessing he's Légal, and so it's known as Légal's Legacy, because obviously when this was played back in the day, it shocked a lot of people. So that's one of my favorite mini games.
Yeah, can you imagine being there? That's the cool thing about chess, right? It's been around for so many years, and like you see a game like this and you're kind of like time capsule into hundreds of years ago, but the same rules and the same beauty of sacrificing your queen to get mate.
I think it's amazing, and it just again really highlights the fact that white just didn't do anything clever until the very last moment when he saw this finish. He just put his pieces on good squares, and the opportunity just arose because black didn't do the optimal moves and was slow at developing his pieces. Because at the end of the day, he only had 1 piece to play with, and white had 3, so he was in a better position.
One to memorize. Because this kind of thing does come up in different incarnations quite often. Did you want to show the other position that you had as well?
Yeah. The other one starts off a little differently. So we got e4, and black played c6, which is known as the Caro-Kann defense. And again, some people think when they see an opening like this that it's not a good move because it doesn't immediately take control of the center. But it does on the next go, and their intention is to play a move like d5 and strike out into the center next go. So as long as your everything helps you get control of the center, it still could be a good move. And I like this example because I actually do play the Caro-Kann as black. Black loses pretty badly in this position, so I hope you don't play it as badly as this, but I do like this as an example to show what can go wrong if black doesn't play this position properly. So white plays d4 because often if you get a chance to put 2 pawns in the middle of the board, you should take it. Controls lots and lots of squares. And then he did play d5. White chose to play knight c3, and then these guys got exchanged, which is absolutely fine, and it's just one of the main lines of this particular opening. And then black played the move knight f6. Again, another normal, sensible move. All his moves so far have been developing. They have been getting control of the center. There's been a reason for doing it. So at this point, up to this point, everything's been fine. White chose to play the move queen d3 here, which is a little strange, I have to admit. So it may not be encouraged, and because queens are not very good defenders, because one of the rules I said was try not to get your queen out too early because you get chased around. So I probably wouldn't necessarily play this as white as my choice, because if I were black, I'd probably happily take this off the board, and then the queen's out, it's been moved quite a few times, and then I'll just continue developing the rest of my pieces. But okay, it's a choice to make. Black chose to play a little bit more actively, a little bit more risky, and chose to play the move e5. This looks a bit crazy. So the question is, why can't white just take that? White can just take that. Black thought they were being clever, so after take, so they didn't just swap off the queens because there'd just be a pawn down. So he saw a check, and he played queen a5 check, also attacking this e5 pawn. So he thought, I'll just snap that back up straight away on the next go. And so, again, it's probably not the best idea unless you really know what you're doing, because black's now getting his queen out too early. And white can play bishop d2, which I think is a great move, developing a piece whilst attacking, multitasking. And then after queen takes e5, which again looks like a fantastic move because it pins this knight on e4. So it looks like it's going to struggle to move here because it's pinned against this king, which is also attacked by this knight. So white probably does have to do something about this knight. However, white appreciated that this position's so strong. He's got a great knight in the center, this bishop could be active, and he just needs to get his king safe. So he actually decided to just castle queenside in this position, which again looks very weird. So why is he just castling queenside? Black was sitting there thinking, well, I can just take this knight now for free. But he's thinking, maybe if I take it with the queen, then there might be a rook e1 pin down here. So that's the trap. But if I take it with the knight, everything's fine. And I'm just a piece up for nothing. But this is where the craziness started. And in this position, again, white decided to sacrifice his queen. And it's kind of crazy. So let's have a look. What's weak about the position? Black's king is still in the center of the board. He's got his queen out. He hasn't got his king safe. So some of the moves that he chose to do were not concentrating on king safety. White prioritizes king safety over this piece in the middle of the board, and now his king's completely safe. White saw the opportunity to play the crazy move, queen to d8 check. Again, looks super mad, doesn't really make sense, but black's got no choice but to play king takes d8, and this is when the killer blow comes. You'll notice that this rook on d1 could potentially attack this king if the bishop moves out the way. And if the bishop moves out the way, you can see all the squares it can go to. We know that the bishop wants to move, but when it comes to a discovered check, or in this case, a double check, the key point is where to put that bishop. We know we want to move it. Some people may choose to move it to f4 or to c3 because I think I'm just going to get the queen back. But there's a way better move than that here. And white found the move bishop to g5 check. So it's double check. And when it's double check, it means you cannot block both checks at the same time. So you have to move your king. And he's got two options to move the king, and both of them fail miserably. So the first one, king to e8, then fails to rook to d8, checkmate. And the king to c7 fails to bishop to d8, checkmate. So again, an absolute miniature of just 11 moves against what's supposed to be a very, very solid opening as black, the Caro-Kann. Turned very sour very quickly because black chose to be a little bit greedy, go after that pawn and go after the knight and not think about his king safety. So a couple of rules broken there with the queen coming out too early and the king not being safe in the center of the board, and it ended very, very miserably.
I just love this game. So beautiful. The final bishop mate is really nice.
Yeah, I like the bishop mate better, I think, because it's rare and it looks like the king can escape that side of the board, but it doesn't quite.
Yeah, it's not a good advertisement for the Caro-Kann because that pawn on c6, like white is totally winning if you play the Sicilian like I do.
You've got a
Dang
c6 square. Yeah,
I'd go king c6, resign.
So pretty much everything would have been exactly the same in the game, but the king wouldn't have been checkmated. So you're right. Therefore, Sicilian is better than Caro-Kann.
Yeah, my logic is impeccable. But seriously, thank you so much, Sabrina. This is Yasser Sarouan agrees with you about the Caro-Kann, so you're in good company. It is a beloved opening by many strong players. But yeah, really great examples. Thanks again, WIM Sabrina Chevannes, and what's the best place to follow you or find more stuff about you?
I'm on Twitter at @schevannes, and I'm also on Instagram at sabcc. So you can follow me on either of those. Feel free to shout out, and yeah, can ask me any chess questions that you want. I'll be happy to answer for sure.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.